of entertainment, enlightenment, and empowerment. This is the Glenn Beck Program.
Peter Schweizer, welcome to the program. I have read many of your books. We've had you on for all of them. I think, Peter, this is the most important book you have written yet.
Oh, well, thank you, Glenn. We have worked together for a long time. That means a lot to me. Thank you. It's one of those issues that we've talked a lot about in general, which is immigration, but the book is really about weaponized immigration. And it's important. We've had the conversations about how immigration affects the economy, how it affects our culture. But when we realize this is actually something that's being wielded against us, by countries like China, but also Mexico, with a real agenda behind it. An agenda, by the way, that I quote them as explaining in the book. I think it puts the immigration debate in a whole different level.
I have to tell you, I learned more in the first two chapters about Mexico that horrified me. Because I've always felt good about Mexico. You know, they have problems with the drugs, and I felt bad for They are not. They're not doing us any favors at all. And we'll get into that here in a second. Can we start with chapter 1? And if you don't mind, Peter, I may have to ask you to come over and join me tomorrow as well, because I don't know if we're going to get past the first two chapters. There's so much meat in here.
Sure.
But in chapter 1 is proof of concept, and it starts with Jimmy Carter and Fidel Castro, and I don't recall any of this. Can you take us through that?
This is back in 1980, the Mariel boat lift. And a lot of people that were around will remember that the United States was flooded with Cuban refugees. And Jimmy Carter, when this first started developing, said, we're a compassionate country, which is true. We're going to welcome them with open arms. And Fidel Castro told his top aides, well, we're going to fill their arms with excrement. He used a different word. And this was really the first modern example of weaponized immigration, because what Fidel Castro recognized was we can actually attack the United States by sending them criminals, people that are mentally ill, but also people that are going to set up criminal networks, drug networks inside the United States. And so what we thought was a sort of random humanitarian event was actually a targeted attack. And I quote from a government panel that later looked at the Mariel boat lift and concluded that it was probably the third most lethal foreign attack on the United States. Besides Pearl Harbor and 9/11, the Mariel boat lift was probably the third most lethal attack. And the thing that's so genius about what Castro did is, Pearl Harbor and 9/11, you attack us, what happens? We strike you back harder than you hit us. That's the American way. If it's a humanitarian attack through immigration, who do you attack? Who do you launch the military against? So it's genius, and this became a template for a lot of modern Latin American leaders. In the summer of 1980, when this was unfolding, Fidel Castro goes to Nicaragua to meet with Sandinista leaders. And there's a young revolutionary there named Lula, who later today is the president of Brazil. And he sets up an entity called the Sao Paulo Forum with Fidel Castro, which includes progressive leaders from across Latin America and in the United States, the Democratic Socialists of America, which is Bernie Sanders and AOC's group. And the Sao Paulo Forum has weaponized immigration against us today. And that includes the Morena Party of Mexico and Petro, the leader of Colombia, and a whole host of other countries who have adopted this as their strategy to defeat the United States.
Okay, so lay that out more carefully so people understand you're not just making that statement. This is a very well-organized, well-financed, and well-executed plan that is out in the open. Just none of us have ever seen it or heard of it.
Yeah. And look, again, this is not Peter Schweizer asserting this. I mean, there are quotes throughout the book from leaders explaining what's going on. You mentioned Mexico. And I always thought of Mexico in the context of, okay, you've got kind of this hapless government and it's corrupt and they're kind of glad for mass migration because now they don't have to feed their own people. The reality is, in their own words, they view immigration very differently. Glenn, this is from a government report. This is a report written by one of President Sheinbaum's top aides in December of 2024. It says,
okay, hang on just a sec. Sheinbaum, in case you don't know, is the president of Mexico. This is 2024, president of Mexico. Go ahead.
Yeah. We already know that the Mexican population in the United States reaches 39.9 million. We Mexicans are reclaiming our territory. That's from December of 2024. Here's a powerful senator who's also a member of the Morena Party who sits on the National Defense Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the Mexican Senate. Quote, we Mexicans are in our territories, California, Nevada, Texas, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Wyoming. We're going to take back the territory that was stolen from us. And, you know, Glenn, you hear these quotes and you think, okay, well, maybe this is just bravado. But as I point out in the book, they have actually created a network and infrastructure inside the United States. And this infrastructure, this includes Mexican government officials inside the United States who are organizing violent protests like those that hit Los Angeles, those that are in Minneapolis, and they are actively participating in our politics. They are working to elect Democrats who are sympathetic, a foreign government, to elect Democrats who are sympathetic to them on immigration and working to defeat President Trump through Mexican consulates that are across the United States.
Peter, I have to ask you a question. It's when I first started talking about George Soros, I just thought I had discovered something new, and I hadn't. There were very few people that were dumb enough to take him on. I didn't know the rules. Yeah. You don't take on George Soros. You know what I mean? So I exposed all this stuff, and because I thought it was new. This is so clear. Your sources are so clear. The names of everyone who says it, who's on the committees, who's using the money, who's here in America, who's overseas, all of it is so clear and clearly laid out. Why don't we know about any of this until now? Why did it take you to come out and put this all together?
Well, a great question, Glenn. And you're right. I mean, you were really one of the first people to publicly take on Soros, and God bless you for doing that. I think it's a couple of things. I think, first of all, Mexico has a reputation for being kind of a sleepy, corrupt government, and people don't take them seriously. I think we should. Mexico, think about this for a second, Glenn. Mexico has 53 consulates in the United States. 53. In contrast, the two other countries with the most are China and the United Kingdom with 6 and 7. So they have this vast network in the United States. And I think that, you know, they have masked what they're doing quite effectively. People that are aware of it, that are, you know, some of these NGOs, you mentioned Soros, they're NGOs funded by Bill Gates and others, who talk about the fact that for them, and again, these are their words, for them, immigration is about transforming the United States. This is a quote from 2023 that I think lays out the fact that they want this to be silenced. Again, this is from 2023. The head of the Mexican news agency, which is like their sort of Associated Press, he says, quote, we are quietly carrying out the reconquest of our territories in the U.S. taken from us in 1848. The reconquest of the Aztec territory is silent, and the day that the gringos realize this, their diabolical fundamentalism will become macabre. In other words, we need to keep this quiet. We don't want to talk about it publicly, because when the gringos, as he says, find out, they're going to be really, really angry about it. So we need to recognize what's going on, have an honest conversation about it. There are dozens of these quotes in the book from Mexican officials, and we go through and name the Mexican government officials who were at the center of the LA riots last year, who are manipulating our politics.
All right. So, Peter, take me through the most incriminating comments from the people in Mexico and from the NGOs to show us This is not just a few people saying this. This is not just an AOC. This is coordinated at the highest levels.
Yeah, there are numerous quotes from the Mexican government I can take you through in addition to the ones that I just mentioned. And the key thing to understand here, Glenn, is that this is not a recent phenomenon. This is something that they have been saying and doing for decades. And one of the things that Sheinbaum has done since she's become president is she has started playing two songs at every official event in Mexico.
Yes.
One of them is the Migrant Hymn, which is something that she had commissioned. And the lyrics to that song are about how migrants that come to the United States don't just go there to work, they go there to actually expand the flag of Mexico to include the United States.
May I give you let me give you some of the lyrics. And through my although my birth certificate says American, I'm pure Mexican. We change places but not flags. I carry green, white, and red in my veins. Like the eagle, we fly without borders. We break through the fence that separates lands. Wow.
Yeah,
she had that commissioned?
Yes, she had that commissioned and written, and she plays that at a lot of her official events. The other song that she plays at a lot of official events, and again, this is all sourced, and this is all from Mexican sources, is a song called We Are More American. And in this song, its lyrics, they go on to describe how California, Texas, Arizona, and Wyoming were stolen from Mexico by the United States, and that the land was free until the gringos arrived. And then the refrain says, we, meaning Mexicans, are more American than all of the gringos. Indians from two continents mixed with Spanish. We are more American than the son of an Anglo-Saxon. There's a very strong ethnic component to this. And again, I could go on and on and on.
Peter, can you imagine if Donald Trump had commissioned a song to be sung that had anything like that in reverse? What people would say. Yeah. Meanwhile, the left has been saying this is not an invasion. This is not an invasion. And people believe that it's not an invasion because they know that, people are struggling to get. But the president of Mexico is commissioning these songs and playing them at her rallies. That's an invasion.
That's right. And by the way, those songs are also now being played at these protest rallies inside the United States. So when you see Mexican flags being waved in Los Angeles or in the Twin Cities right now, that's not a coincidence. We know that the flag that was waved in Los Angeles was given to that motorcycle rider. You remember that iconic picture?
Yeah.
That flag was given to him by the Mexican consulate. And they play these songs in the United States, saying we are more American than the gringos. This is our land. Let me just read a quote from a journalist.
Hang on. Ricky, can you get Matt to get those two songs, have them translated, and release them with the translation? So just put the translation on the screen, but those songs have got to be recorded someplace, and see if we can have that for tomorrow. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Peter. We've only got about 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a journalist, Antonio Friedel Zapata, in 2023. This is a Mexican journalist. He says when he talks to his friends and colleagues in Mexico, they confidently explain, we are taking it back, meaning the American Southwest. So this is him, quote, so what we are witnessing with this massive legal or illegal immigration of Hispanics, mainly Mexicans, it is a silent, persistent reconquest of vast territories in the U.S. American Southwest. With a strong Mexican population, a reconquest that will have important geopolitical consequences for the future of the United States. Again, this is not me saying it. This is not some crazy lunatic saying it. These are government officials, respected journalists, and pillars of society in Mexico. And Glenn, the protests in Los Angeles last year, I named the Mexican officials that live in the United States. Think about this. There are senior Mexican government officials who live inside the United States who were fanning the flames, organizing these protests, and cheering them on. And I quote them extensively in the book.
All right, so we're going to have you quote them, name them by name, and I want to encourage you. This is such an important book. It's called The Invisible Coup by Peter Schweizer. It's available today. Get it now. The Invisible Coup. More with Peter. Wait until you hear. We have more. We have Islam. We have China. He has it all. We're getting more into what happened with Mexico and who is actually behind a lot of this stuff in just a second with Peter Schweizer. Stand by. We're talking to Peter Schweizer about his new book, The Invisible Coup. It is out in bookstores tomorrow. It is available online right now. You can get it, be delivered to you tomorrow by Peter Schweizer, The Invisible Coup. I think, Peter has been a longtime friend of mine and a writer and a journalist, worked for the Wall Street Journal, the Times, the Post, and everything else. And he's always taken on both sides very fairly. He's not used usually now by the Times or anybody else because, he's done books on, the Clinton cash, but he's also done it on George Bush and, he's written stuff on everybody, and very, very buttoned up. And this is the most important book I think he's ever written because as I read this, even what I was saying today on radio in hour one about the president and what his plan is for the Western Hemisphere and why he's moving the way he's moving right now, this has to be taken into consideration because this is what's here in our own country. And Peter, take us to Los Angeles and that first ICE, pushback in Los Angeles. Who was funding it? How did it happen? Who was in charge of it?
Well, the first thing, Glenn, everybody needs to realize, and this will be kind of shocking to people, is that Mexico actually has elected Mexican officials that sit in the Mexican parliament that live in the United States and represent Mexicans inside the United States in the Mexican parliament. So this is like a yes, there is, and I'm going to quote from a couple of them. There are senators, Mexican senators that sit in the Mexican Senate that deliberate and determine Mexican policy who live full-time inside the United States and represent Mexicans living in our country, which is a massive intrusion into our sovereignty. There's a senator.
How did we ever allow that to happen?
It just happened. They did it, and nobody said anything about it. These are the migrant senators and the migrant members of the Chambers of Deputy. And there's a Senator Ruiz, for example. She lives in Arizona. She actually supports legislation to make California the 33rd state of Mexico, which I guess some people would say let them have it. But
let them have it.
But this is how they're thinking. But to get to those riots in Los Angeles, let me quote from a couple of elected officials. One of them, his name is Alejandro Robles. He sits in the Mexican Parliament. He's also the head of the International Committee for Morena, the ruling party of Mexico. But he lives in California, outside of Los Angeles. And he describes his purpose in the United States. He travels across the United States to, in his words, our mission is to organize the militancy inside the United States. So he's met with, for example, people at the People's Forum in New York, which of course has Antifa ties, and he describes how he goes from across the country to organize and meet with militants. On another occasion, he says that the migrants in the United States and the people working with them like him are, quote, in the front line on the battle of civil resistance in the United States. That's how he defines his purpose. Let me quote another individual, and this is, well, let me add one more thing about Robles, which is very interesting. Robles is particularly angered at immigrants from Latin America, from Mexico, that come into the United States and adopt American values and, quote-unquote, Americanize or try to blend in. He calls them, quote-unquote, traitors to Mexico, and he says that Scheinbaum agrees with him. He said they don't agree with being Mexican. They would prefer always to be an imperialist colony or part of the United States. These are the people that are involved in the United States and activities. I'll quote another congressman who lives in Los Angeles. This is Congressman Palenko, lives inside Los Angeles. During the Los Angeles riots, there are videos that he posted on social media of Hispanic cops in Los Angeles being harassed for doing their jobs. And people are shouting that they're being disloyal to their ethnic heritage. And he seems to be participating in this. And he writes on social media, that's how it goes. Our race for our race. He then goes on to liken those that are blocking traffic in Los Angeles and attacking the police to Aztec warriors. And he again says, for our race. And then he goes on to say that we declare ourselves in permanent resistance. These are Mexican government officials inside the United States who are weaponizing immigration.
So this is why we saw Mexican flags everywhere and no American flags, because this is part of the plan.
Yep.
Have you tracked down the funding of all of this?
We've tracked down some of the funding, and there are NGOs that got funded by the elements of the Arabella Network, et cetera. And we know that the consular officials have provided material support to these operations. So, for the life of me, Glenn, I don't understand why we allow Mexico to have 53 consulates in the United States when China and Great Britain have 6 or 7. It makes completely no sense, and they politicized it.
Let me, because you have so much more in your book, but, I'm trying to figure out ways to explain what Donald Trump is doing with Venezuela, with Greenland, even with the Middle East. He is restructuring the world, and he is building a Western hemisphere that is safe for the United States. That's why he went after Panama. That's why he was going after Venezuela, and he's not done there. And I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna try to flip Cuba as well. But Mexico is going to have to be on this list, which is, that's really, really bad. Are you seeing any movement from this administration just to at least get the NGOs and to get some of these organizations out of the United States?
Yeah, I think we are seeing movement there. I'm encouraged. I wish it was happening quicker. But here's the reality. The reality is if you are a NGO and you are funding radical groups, it gets very difficult for the DOJ to prosecute. What changes that is if you are involved with a foreign government or you are involved with a foreign drug cartel or terrorist organization. And what we saw in Venezuela, I think, is the first step in what's going to become a pattern. I think Mexico is the next area where the administration is going to be focusing attention. And what Trump has asked Scheinbaum to do is allow for us to conduct operations against drug cartels in Mexico. Scheinbaum's not going to do that for a couple.
What's the role of the cartels? Because I always thought the cartels played a huge role, but this seems very ideological as well.
It is. It's ideological, and the cartels have joined forces with the progressives in Latin America. So the Sao Paulo Forum we were talking about earlier, there's an enormous amount of research I cited in the book from very, very credible sources that the Sao Paulo Forum has largely been funded by the drug cartels. Because we know a couple of things about the drug cartels. Number one, they love open borders. They make more money off of human smuggling than they do off of selling drugs. The second thing we know is that the drug cartels want the war on drugs, meaning military operations conducted against them in Latin America, to end. Now, here's where it gets particularly dicey inside the United States. There is an organization called Progressive International that was founded by Bernie Sanders in 2018. AOC, Greg Zasar, the congressman, others are active in this organization. As we point out in the book, Progressive International has numerous advisors that are named in the book who are tied to the drug cartels. And what Progressive International is pushing are two issues that the drug cartels really want advanced. Number one, open borders, and number two, an end to military operations against the drug cartels in Latin America. AOC, other members of Congress have actually introduced legislation. That's their priority, to end military operations against the drug cartels. We know who favors that. That is the drug cartels, and we know that there are individuals tied with this organization, Progressive International, that are linked to those drug networks.
Any idea of the links to anything that's going on in Minnesota now? I know DSA is now, they said over the weekend, they're training 1,000 people for action in places like Minneapolis or New York. You know, the DSA has deep roots in South America and south of our border. Any connections at all to what's happening in Minnesota?
Yes, absolutely. So we know that Mexico has a consulate in the Twin Cities, and the political actions they've engaged in elsewhere in the United States, it would certainly fit that pattern. Democratic Socialists of America, I think, is a particularly troubling organization, not just because of their ideas, but because of their ties. They are linked to the Sao Paulo Forum. They are members. They participate in the Sao Paulo Forum, which, again, numerous evidence that that organization is largely funded by the drug cartels. The Democratic Socialists of America have started pushing the similar agendas that we see. So we have to recognize that what's happening is a confluence of entities that don't seem to have potentially a lot in common are actually working in common because they have a common cause. And they recognize that the way that you can subvert and undermine the United States most effectively is by importing the revolution. And I actually quote people as saying that in the book, people that are part of this movement. And that's what we're seeing. So we expect to see more of this, not just in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, elsewhere. And this is the reason that the Democratic Party is fighting so hard against deportations, because they see this as a key constituency for their political viability.
That is crazy. Peter, thank you so much. We'll talk again tomorrow. I'm going to have Peter come back tomorrow and do part 2 of this. It's The Invisible Coup by Peter Schweizer. It is out officially tomorrow. You can buy it online right now. It is, I think, the most important book that he has done. I couldn't recommend this book higher. If you really want to understand what we are up against in America, what we are really facing, The Invisible Coup by Peter Schweizer. We'll continue with him more tomorrow. Thank you, Peter.